Hello again, you two. This is video number 3 in the Helm mini course. This is an extract from my full 30-hour Kubernetes training course. There's a link in the description below. I've also got a really good Istio course as well. But if you're just here for Helm, then let's continue the story on finding charts. We've now had a chance to play a little bit with Helm, and we've installed our first chart. But there was a major bit of detail that I missed out previously, and that's where do we actually find these charts from? Well, you'll remember from the previous demo that we did a little exercise of installing MySQL just for fun. And I directed you to what is currently the sort of central point, the central search point for Helm charts, and it's called Artifact Hub. And in that demo, we just went straight in and searched for MySQL. And one major piece of information that I missed out in the previous demo was, well, which of these should we go for? We actually had quite a lot of matching results for MySQL. There's no obvious way of telling really which of these we should go for. So in this video, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about what's going on here. Why are there so many duplicates? And I am afraid that at the time of recording, I'm in the middle of 2021 right now. This might change over time, but I'm not sure. But certainly, as things are at the moment, unfortunately, there is a bit of a political problem here. It's certainly not an ideal situation, but let me explain. You might remember from the previous demonstration that I kept things simple and I just said, oh, let's go for the first of these matches, this one that has an org of Bitnami and a repo of Bitnami. And you'll remember that the first step in installing the chart was we had to add a repository for Bitnami. Why did we have to do that? Well, to explain, let's switch back to the command line and I'm going to show you a command that we've not seen so far, which is helm repo list, and this will list any repositories that we've registered with our installation of Helm. If you're following along and you did the previous demo, then you will definitely have the Bitnami repository listed in the results. We gave it the name Bitnami, but you might also see the result here, which is called stable. Now, I say might because by the time you watch this, they might have removed this from the repository list. But certainly at the time of recording, we are getting this chart called stable, and it's at the URL you can see here. Now, if we follow this link, again, by the time you watch this, this website might not even exist. And the reason I'm saying that is that, first of all, this Helm stable repository was originally, kind of as the name suggests, it was an area where a set of stable charts were located. And by stable charts, that means there was basically a unique chart for all of the major software packages that you can think of. And those charts were tested, developed by experts, and you could be certain that if you downloaded a chart from the stable repository, you were getting a well-tested chart that would be secure, it wouldn't have malware in it, all that kind of thing. So this stable repository was wonderful. It was kind of just a common, easy default place to go to whenever you needed to find a chart. Well, you can probably guess where this is going from the tone of my voice. Unfortunately, it no longer exists. If we go a little further down, it's kind of not that obvious at first, just looking at this page, but a little further down, there is a note here to the status of the project, the deprecation timeline, and so on. If I just follow one of these links, it will take me to the GitHub page. All of these charts were originally hosted on a GitHub page. As you can see pretty quickly, this project is no longer supported. It was previously they've called it a canonical source for Helm charts, which is just jargon to say this is the default place that you go to. Your first port of call for any Helm chart was the stable repository. So unfortunately, even though at the time of recording, Helm does show this stable repository as being sort of pre-installed, we didn't have to add it, even though it's there, it is now useless. If you have a little bit of a search around, you will find the underlying reason why this stable chart has now been deprecated. For example, I'm here on the Helm blog site. The primary reason they give for this deprecation was just the cost and the overhead in maintaining so many different charts. Now, of course, it wasn't just a case of uploading a chart to their GitHub page. They were responsible, or they took on the responsibility of making sure these charts were safe. So there was a massive amount of maintenance needed. Eventually, it was decided that they could no longer bear those costs. So the plan that they have, and this is really where the Artifacts Hub has come in, is that the community will now bear the cost of maintaining packages. And what they really mean by community, of course, is just anybody who is willing to do this. And it means that we have a kind of an unsatisfactory situation at the moment in the industry in that, and we saw this with the example of MySQL, what we're seeing here are lots of different organizations who have decided that they will create their own MySQL charts and upload it to the Artifacts Hub, or at least advertise it on the Artifacts Hub. So starting from the top of this list, for example, we have the organization called Bitnami, who are hosting MySQL. So I'll invite you to check out these various different repositories that are hosting MySQL if you're interested. I'm not going to read them all out. And quite frankly, I don't recognize many of these repositories. Just picking out one of them, a repository called T3N. Now, I don't know if you've heard of them, but if I follow that link, I can follow the link to T3N. And they have on their repository Snippet, license management system. They've got Elasticsearch in their repository, even though, as far as I know, they're not responsible for Elasticsearch. They are hosting it. Looks like they've got quite a wide range of charts. MongoDB, yeah, quite a few others. But who are T3N? And actually, you have to do a little bit of investigation detective work to find out who T3N are, but it turns out they're just the publishers of the T3N Technology magazine, which you may or may not be familiar with. And we can see here that on their GitHub page, they do have a location, which is presumably where they develop their Helm charts. Now, I have to be honest that this is all a little bit messy, really. If you're wanting to install a chart like MySQL, then I'm afraid the situation is you do have to find a repository that you know and that you trust. I'm sure T3N are a very trustworthy organization. You know, you don't know if they're going to be maintaining that repository. You don't know if it will still be here in a year's time. And so it does feel a little bit kind of like the Wild West, in that there's a lot of different organizations setting up these chart repositories, but who knows how long they're going to be around for. Now, going back to the original demo, we picked out the Bitnami repository. I have no connection whatsoever with Bitnami. It's the first result in the list. Now, they do appear to put some kind of weighting on the results, and certainly the fact that there are quite a few stars alongside this repository does make it kind of feel like a popular repository. And I don't know, 40 doesn't sound a lot, but most of these repositories have 0 stars or 1 and 2 stars. So Bitnami does feel like kind of the biggest match for when we did a search for MySQL. Just in case you're interested, Bitnami are actually a division of VMware, and Bitnami are really in the business of kind of publishing open source software. But I hope you can see what I'm saying here is that, unfortunately, without those stable charts existing anymore, you do have to sort of just take a view on whether you trust these repository owners or not. And it might be the case that you're working in an organization where you're not allowed to use untrusted sources. In that case, I'm afraid Helm as a package manager quite possibly won't work for you. Now, there are still a lot of benefits to Helm. As I mentioned in the introduction section, there's a lot more to Helm than just package management. And we're going to be looking at what else you can get out of Helm in the remainder of these videos. But for now, it's been a very hard video to record, this one, because it's kind of a negative video. It would be wonderful if we had just a common as they called it, a canonical source where we don't have to think about who are we going to get these charts from. We just get them from the official Helm source that no longer exists. And as far as I can tell, it's not coming back either. I did delay the recording of the Helm section of this course to wait for this kind of political situation to calm down. I was hoping that some other major platform would step forward and set up a replacement for the stable Helm charts. I have a feeling now in 2021 that's probably not going to happen. So I hope that's demystified what's going on with this Artifact Hub. Of course, I can't give you advice as to which of the repositories to work with. You may have to do some detective work and investigating for yourself. We won't go any further with this MySQL example, but what we will do in the next video, we'll look at a kind of more realistic example. If you're wanting to know how I built the monitoring stack in the earlier part of this course, then we'll discover that I used Helm to do that, and I'll take you through the exact steps that I followed. I'll see you for that.